Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Rennch. On today's show, we're going to be building a custom car dolly for this 1976 Porsche 912. So the car behind me is actually Lacern 1. It is the first Subaru engine swap kit. Prototype car, and we're trying to remove the suspension but still maintain the mobility of the car. So we're going to be building a custom steel dolly to rest the chassis on while we do all of the rest of the suspension and things like that. So this episode, I'm going to take you step by step through building that dolly. It's going to be custom, so let me walk you through the steps of what we're doing. So as you can see, the car is resting on my custom wooden jack stands with the dollies underneath. It's the same thing that the Blasphemy build was sitting on for a year or so. And I have all of this steel here on the floor of the garage. This is 2-inch square box tubing that's 1/8 of an inch thick. And we have these big old wheels, which are I think 8-inch wheels, to mount to it. My big goal for this car is I want it to be high enough that I can slide a Porsche, or in this case Subaru engine, underneath it without having to jack the car up even more. It makes installing engines a lot easier when that thing can just slide right underneath. So what I have to do now is cut a ton of small pieces, and I'm gonna do that now before I start welding things up. Once I'm done cutting everything up, I will walk you guys through how we're going to assemble this. So literal hours of cutting and drilling and grinding to get these pieces as prepared as possible. So I've got base plates, and these base plates will get welded to the rails here, and the wheels will then mount to the base plates like that. That'll be a thing. And then these uprights will actually bolt to the factory mounting locations. They'll actually bolt to front suspension mounting points and rear suspension mounting points. So what I'll do, once we determine how wide we want this thing to be, I'll start cutting like a few 2-inch boxes. It'll just be little ends of the boxes that will be about like this. Then I'll weld them on to the top of these uprights. These uprights will be bolted on. I will weld these L brackets onto the verticals once we figure out how long they need to be. But for right now, what we're gonna do is Mark has just set these up under the car. We're gonna basically like get our first 3 pieces, which is going to be the 2 right angles, and I'll tack those together. And then if we can get the wheels underneath, we'll have some idea of how long the uprights need to be to connect to the factory mounting points. So after a bunch of welding and fitting and measuring, we have the basic frame. So now we've got basically the big square that goes underneath the car. Then what we'll do is get it under the car and build the stanchions that will connect to the factory mounting points. Question is, we're not really sure how to get it under the car in its current configuration. So we're gonna have to have a think about how to actually get this thing physically underneath while levitating the car. Because that's what I do. I'm a magician, I can just levitate the car. And then get the thing underneath so we can bolt it to these suspension mounts.
Very close. We're at 36.
So we need 1 inch.
1 inch. Give it a little.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Whoa, aggressive.
Went for it, okay.
Yeah, that was a lot more aggressive than I intended. Rear over.
Feels nice.
Sure does.
All right. Okay, I just went to drink this tea that I had from earlier. It's just full of metal.
Ugh.
Just completely full of metal. What do you think of the Dolly, Ben? Okay. All right, guys, it's day 2. Thankfully, the rain has stopped. We are a dry day here in Long Beach. And here's where I left the Dolly. I'm by myself today. So what I have to do is I'm going to lift the front end. You can see we're at a bit of a rake at the moment. I'm going to lift the front end, and I'm going to see what the distance is between the bolt hole and the Dolly, so I can measure the stanchions. And I'm not even sure if I'm using the word stanchions correctly, but in this case, I just mean the uprights that bolt to the car, that secure it to the Dolly. If I'm not using it correctly, I'm sure one of you guys will politely let me know in the comments, because you guys are always so polite if I don't do something exactly like you want me to do it. So I'm going to secure the front and then move on to the cross member in the back, and then making the back. Basically what I'm going to do is make these cradles that sit on the torsion bar tube. So the front's going to be bolted in, the rear's going to be sitting on the torsion bar tube. One thing I'm really trying to pay attention to here is that the rear of the car has to be at least 36, 37 inches high, so I can slide the motor in without having to lift anything. And that motor goes on my little engine hoist stand table thing, which is a technical term you guys don't need to concern yourself with right now. So I still have to go a little bit higher on the front end. I'm super sketched out by it. So I think I'm going to move the blasphemy build out of the way in case the entire thing comes tumbling down this way. I need to go just a little bit further to get the car level. I've got a level on the door right now. My height in the rear is perfect. So we're really, really close, but it's so tenuous. I've got it sort of triangulated in the back, held up, and the rear stand doesn't look great. It looks a little wonky. The front's, I think, okay. I don't know how to brace against anything at the moment, so I want to move this. I'm too sketched out by it. I cannot even begin to tell you how gnarly this is. It's just so nerve-wracking. So I've got level on the level. So the car, as far as I know, is level. I have my 37 inches in the back, so I can slide an engine right in, which is amazing. And the front is as tenuous as it gets. So I'd love to figure out a way to get the thing to rest where it is, but I don't know how to do that at the moment. I do have an engine hoist that I could theoretically loop over the back of this just as a fail-safe, but I haven't done that as of yet. right, so here we are. We've got these verticals, or the stanchions, as I'm calling them. They are basically in place. Now I need to make sure this is all kind of measured up and squared, and then these are equidistant. I will then mark the holes, drill them out all the way through, and then bolt these things on. At that point, I should be able to actually release the front jack, and this will do what it does, which is to jack the car up in the front. I probably won't, just because it seems like a terrible idea. I might wait until I get the rears on and everything is sort of settled, but that is the process right now, is just getting these verticals on, getting them bolted, and making that secure. I will feel a lot better about things once these things are there, and I know I have something holding up the front end of the car other than an old ammo box and some wood. All right, gents, there we are. The fronts are secured. They are bolted to the car. They are bolted to the dolly. This way I can remove the wheels, remove the arms, and store the whole thing flat, so it's not just this big, giant, obtrusive thing if I need to store it. Hi, Ben. How's it going there, pal? So, onto the rear. What we're going to do here is there's a huge torsion tube that really has a lot of the support of the car right there. So what I'm going to do is make a cradle, basically same kind of upright, same kind of bracing that bolts into the dolly, and then I'm going to make a cradle that literally just sort of rests the torsion bar in that spot. For transport, if we need to, we can always strap the dolly to the car, cut the tacks off the cross member where it is. I've got to cut that to the correct length and put it directly underneath the torsion bar. Then I can build the uprights back up to it just like I did for the other side. All right, rear cross member is tacked. All right, kind of dark. Oh, hot, hot. All right, so I've made my cradles here. I need these to be 16.5, including this. So that's the next task, is to cut a couple of these down. All right, guys, so I'm finally at the point where I'm going to place these. This has been so much welding, holy moly, more than I've done in many years. So these need to go on the cross member. I need to make sure they fit okay. I will then mark the holes. If the cross member is where it needs to be, I will weld the cross member up, and then I just need to drill these 4 holes and we should be good to go. It's a little dark right now to film under there, so I'm gonna show you the aftermath. On the money. Let's go. Well, that was a ton of work. That was a lot of work. That was a big weekend. It wouldn't have been so bad, I think, if I didn't want the car so high. But because it's so high, it really made things awkward and challenging. But this is the moment of truth. So I'm going to pull all the jack stands and everything, and let's just fingers crossed that this thing stays up the way it's supposed to. Well, that's an unforeseen hitch. The tires flattened right out. We have to inflate them to 30 psi. Who knew? All right, guys, so Houston, we have a problem. The dolly we built is great. It works exactly like it's supposed to. The problem is the wheels we chose are only rated for 300 pounds per corner. So they just collapse under the weight of the car. So we have new wheels on the way, and they will hopefully be a lot better. All right, guys, here we are. I decided to just make this video with my iPhone, replace the wheels with these kind of bitchin' gold wheels, and now the thing is awesome. It rolls great. It is high enough. I can fit my engine. I can slide it right under there. Any Porsche engine, any Subaru engine is perfect. This thing is super burly. You can move it with one hand, which is awesome. And Ben is checking it out. What do you think, bud? Pretty sick, huh? It's a pretty nice dolly. Probably the best dolly you've seen. So yeah, man, pretty stoked about this whole project. It was a lot of work. It was a full weekend, but this thing will benefit for years to come. All right, dudes, so that is the dolly build. I hope you enjoyed it. It was really fun. Got to do a lot of kind of fabrication stuff and weld on some thick metal for once. So my welds actually look really good. So if anybody out there wants to actually build this dolly, I will get you the dimensions and the materials needed. I think we spent about 250 bucks. I think the wheels were about 120. The steel was about 120, and then a whole bunch of nuts and bolts and things like that. So that'll do it. Thanks you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.